U.S. Representative Mike Flood didn't just comment on the January 29, 2026 Fremont High School anti-ICE protest incident. He personally owned and operated the very news outlet that seeded the false narrative, then sat back while the rest of Nebraska's Republican political class used his station's misleading video to launch a coordinated statewide attack on a juvenile driver. As the founder and controlling figure behind Flood Communications, Flood owns News Channel Nebraska, NCN, outright as its flagship television network. NCN is not an independent local station serving rural Nebraska with unbiased journalism. It is a sophisticated pipeline that takes mainstream media framing, filters it through Flood's personal business interests, and delivers it to rural audiences under the guise of hometown news. The Fremont incident proved it in real time. On the evening of January 29, 2026, NCN posted a short, deliberately cropped video clip of the collision with the caption, "A girl was taken to the hospital after being struck by an SUV displaying Trump flag at Fremont High School." The clip focused only on the moment of impact, stripping away the full context captured on multiple bystander cameras. The female student protester running directly into the roadway, the SUV surrounded by a hostile crowd, yelling threats, hitting the car, and stealing the Trump flag. Police citations later confirmed the driver faced no charges for hitting or assaulting anyone, only for leaving the scene justified by the mob threat, and a pedestrian violation for the student. Yet, NCN's selective editing became the visual foundation for the entire political response. The coordinated repost machine, politicians using Flood's own station. Within hours, every major Nebraska Republican politician either reposted NCN's exact post with the same video or attached the identical clip to their own nearly identical statements. Representative Mike Flood, the owner, posted his statement directly alongside NCN's video clip. Representative Don Bacon attached the NCN clip while accusing the driver of using their vehicle to assault a legal protester. Representative Adrian Smith referenced the NCN coverage while calling it a violent act. Senator Pete Ricketts and Senator Deb Fischer included the NCN clip in their posts, framing the driver as disrupting a peaceful protest. Governor Jim Pillen echoed the exact NCN language, the girl who was hit, in his official statement. This was not independent outrage. It was a closed-loop operation. Flood Station created the misleading visual, the politicians amplified it with coordinated text, and rural Nebraska received a polished lie dressed up as local reporting. The coordination happened through Nebraska GOP staff channels, signal groups, and shared talking point memos. Flood didn't just report the story. He shaped it, then watched his colleagues spread it. Fake News Channel Nebraska, the perfect disguise for mainstream bias in rural clothing. News Channel Nebraska has earned the derisive nickname Fake News Channel Nebraska among critics for exactly this kind of operation. Owned by a sitting U.S. Congressman, NCN markets itself as independent, community-focused, and Nebraska-first, covering high school sports, rural news, and local weather. In reality, it functions as a sophisticated filter for mainstream media narratives, repackaged to look like authentic local journalism. Criticisms of NCN are widespread and well-earned. Selective editing and framing that consistently favors certain political viewpoints. The Fremont clip is a textbook example. Heavy promotion of pro-immigrant and anti-ICE themes through its Spanish-language stations, Radio Lobo, Fiesta 94.5 FM, Telemundo, Nebraska, which directly serve Flood's Latino and immigrant customer base. Ties to private investors and broader networks of investment companies and associations that benefit from cheap immigrant labor, acting as a conduit for national left-leaning talking points while pretending to be a grassroots rural voice. NCN is the perfect vehicle for delivering mainstream fake news to rural Nebraska. It looks and sounds like local journalism from a Nebraskan like Mike Flood, but it funnels filtered mainstream narratives straight into homes across the state. Rural viewers get the illusion of independent reporting while actually receiving the same biased framing pushed by national media and the investment networks that control both politics and agriculture. The Fremont incident proved the pipeline in real time. NCN seeded the lie, the politicians amplified it, and the false narrative spread unchecked. The blatant conflict of interest, a congressman weaponizing his own media empire, having a sitting U.S. representative own a statewide news network, is already an enormous conflict of interest. When that network seeds the exact video and framing that the entire political delegation then uses to attack a juvenile, it crosses into outright corruption. Flood didn't just report the story. He shaped it, then joined his colleagues in spreading the lie. His Spanish-language stations profit directly from the same immigrant and Latino communities targeted by ICE. By framing the driver as the villain and defending the right to peacefully protest against ICE, Flood quietly shielded the customer base that keeps his stations profitable and his donor network happy. The fact that every major Nebraska Republican used the exact same NCN post makes the conflict undeniable. Flood's station provided the misleading visual, the politicians amplified it, and rural Nebraska received mainstream-style deception presented as hometown truth. This was not journalism. It was a congressman weaponizing his own media company to shape public perception, then coordinating with his colleagues to lock in the false narrative. The deeper network exposed. The Fremont incident pulled back the curtain on the full web connecting Flood's media empire to Nebraska's agricultural organizations, investment companies, and the cheap immigrant labor machine. Flood has been endorsed by the Nebraska Farm Bureau, welcomed Nebraska Corn Growers Association members to Washington, and aligned with Nebraska cattlemen on livestock policy. These same groups endorse or work closely with Governor Jim Pillen, Senator Deb Fischer, and the rest of the delegation. All of them advocate for expanded H-2A visas and pathways for undocumented workers, the labor pool that keeps meatpacking plants running and profits flowing to investors like BlackRock and Vanguard. The coordinated statements were never about protecting students. They were about protecting the economic status quo. Cheap immigrant labor for agribusiness, advertising revenue for Flood's Spanish-language stations, and campaign support for the politicians. The Fremont video was simply the excuse to signal that allegiance without saying the words outright. No corrections, no accountability, just silence. After police citations proved the driver never hit or assaulted anyone, not one politician, including Flood, issued a retraction or clarification. They simply let the false narrative linger and moved on. Mike Flood continued repeating the inaccurate framing in interviews days later. The silence was deafening. This was never about truth or justice. It was about power, profit, and protecting the networks that benefit from undocumented and immigrant labor. Mike Flood used his own news channel to seed the lie, watched his colleagues amplify it, and never corrected the record. The entire episode stands as a damning indictment of a congressman who treats his media company as a political weapon and rural Nebraska as the audience for filtered mainstream narratives. The Fremont anti-ICE protest didn't just expose two teenagers in a chaotic moment. It exposed the underhanded machinery of Nebraska politics, a sitting congressman's news outlet feeding misleading footage to his colleagues, who then used it to push a false narrative that serves their donors, their businesses, and the cheap labor interests that keep the entire system profitable. Mike Flood didn't defend Nebraska values that day. He defended his own bottom line, and he used local news to do it. That is the real story behind News Channel Nebraska's role in the Fremont incident. And it is why so many Nebraskans now call it exactly what it is: fake News Channel Nebraska.